Bacon clearly has a terrible belly flop, the worst dive ever.
Oh yeah, I was gonna bring that up. She does a fantastic dive, and he does a legitimate belly flop. Like that
seriously?
hurt. That hurt. I felt that. I felt that through the screen.
I was like, they weren't like, let's shoot that one more time, Kevin.
No. Kevin, do you know how to dive, Kevin?
Welcome back to the Great American Movie Review, where we review great American movies. I mean, kinda. My
What
name
in the world was that?
That was me just saying that this might not actually be a great movie.
Oh, okay. I would put just like a little inflection where we review great American movies.
Okay, well, maybe I'll redo it. All right, I'll do it again.
I didn't know that was going to be part of it. You have to let me know about that. Because
okay,
I thought
I'll do it again. I'll do it again, and you
I
say
thought, wow, that sounded really good. Wait a second, what are you doing?
All right. Welcome back to Great American Movie Review, where we review great American movies.
My name is Kyle.
My name's Micaiah. This is a Movie of the Week style podcast where we take turns picking films and we talk about their context and quality. This week, I have selected the iconic 1980 horror film Friday the 13th.
Sure, iconic because it spawned a franchise.
Yes, it is a very long-running franchise. So iconic does not necessarily mean quality, and I did not pick this movie because of its inherent quality, although it does have fans. And I am a fan of it. I will get that out of the way too. I don't think it's good, but I am a fan of it. So, but yeah, for those who don't know, Friday the 13th, it's a slasher film that came out in the year 1980, directed by Sean S. Cunningham. I said this name wrong really bad.
No, Sean S. Cunningham is
I thought I said Cunningham.
Oh, no.
Okay, either way. The film that came out
That's
in
a spin-off movie from
the film one came out, watch. Yeah, the film directed by Sean S. Cunningham became a major part of the slasher genre just in the cultural zeitgeist around that kind of style of film after Halloween came out in 1978. We already talked about Texas Chainsaw a couple weeks ago now. And I just kind of wanted to follow through on that kind of thread and see how that evolved over the years, because it's kind of interesting, because in the 70s you had movies like obviously Texas Chainsaw. 74 you had a bunch of like Italian giallo films that kind of started to cross over a little bit.
Halloween came out like 2 years before, no?
Yeah, and even before Halloween was The Town That Dreaded Sundown, but clearly I actually watched that movie like this last week, and it's clearly like not quite got the formula down.
Sure.
And so this one got the formula down at this point, because Halloween really, I think, kind of established that formula. Whether it set out to do or not, I really don't think it did try to do it. And Carpenter has said as much about it. He's like, I had never had any intention of doing that, with this movie, like setting up these tropes and everything. But when this movie was made, it was actually the writer of it that I saw in one of the like interview clips saying that the producer came to him and was like, or the director actually, I think, said, Halloween's making money, let's rip it off. And so they went
that does not surprise me.
They watched Halloween, they saw the kind of tropes in that movie that were kind of established by it. There are other examples, like we said, Texas Chainsaw really established this mass killer thing, but I think Halloween is the one that really cemented what these movies are. And then this movie just kind of took that and ran with it. And it was successful for doing so, because it had a $550,000 budget and it made $39 million in its original release, which is crazy modern day money wise.
It says on Wikipedia it made 59.8.
Yeah, it depends on where you look. Official like box office numbers based on tracking what I found on Box Office Mojo and everything said 39 million, but that could be a lot more, just because of later releases and everything. And I don't know how much that gets tracked, but clearly it was successful because in today's money, that's
Very successful.
a $2 million budget grossing $145 million. I mean, like equivalency, adjusted for inflation and everything. That's clearly a big success. It was the 18th highest grossing movie the year it came out, which, that's really good for a movie that's so small budgeted. And
Yeah,
yeah, like we said,
Texas Chainsaw made similar numbers, obviously on a smaller
yeah,
budget, but
on an
it
even
was
smaller
also
budget.
like the 10th ish most grossing
Yeah,
or highest grossing movie of that year, 1974. So
yeah,
it's pretty much, I mean, financially very very similar.
yeah. And that came out before like the blockbuster era with,
Right.
Jaws, Star Wars,
Jaws
things
was
like that,
75, right?
yeah, the mid to late 70s kind of the
Yeah.
blockbuster, and then the 80s blockbusters and franchises were kind of everything. So,
The blockbuster franchise environment that Steven Spielberg
yeah,
and George Lucas dragged it kicking and screaming into.
yeah. Which, if you had any doubts about this movie's success, it had 10 sequels, a reboot, and a crossover film with Freddy versus Jason. So, and they haven't made one in a number of years at this point. The last one that came out was, I think, the 2009 reboot. I think it was 2009.
Which one is the space one?
Jason
Because
X.
yes,
Yes, Jason X. That one.
that's one of the only ones that I know about.
Yeah, that Jason goes to space at some point, so it
Yeah.
goes off the rails. But it's
No
actually,
horror movie is immune to that.
yeah, but yeah, we're gonna. I mean,
Or
it's
no
an
horror movie franchise is immune to
yeah.
that.
This is a pretty iconic film from 1980, but still, just letting you know, we're gonna talk full spoilers with this. And
Yes, we
also,
are.
just before we keep going, if you prefer listening to us, we're available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you prefer us in just like an audio format. So that those are out there. But yeah, Kyle, I wanted to make you watch this movie because I think that the Friday the 13th franchise, to me, is my favorite horror franchise. But it's not because I think it's good. I just have a blast watching these movies because most of them are just so bad.
Obviously, I knew about Jason Voorhees. I didn't know about Mama Voorhees, so I knew nothing
Oh, you didn't know about the
besides.
twist?
No, I didn't know about the twist.
Oh wow.
I thought originally that it was what's his name, Bill, the
Bill?
mustache dude, the weird dude
Oh no,
who's
that's Steve.
hitting on the last girl.
Yeah,
Steve. Okay.
that's Steve. Yeah, Steve's a
Yeah.
creep.
So I assumed because they didn't show Jason Voorhees' face ever in the movie
Yeah.
aside from the ending. I assumed that it was either American Michael Palin, the dude who's like, "Ooh, Camp Crystal Lake is doomed," that kind of
Oh
thing. I
yes.
assumed it was that guy. I don't recall his name, but I assumed it was that guy. I assumed it was Steve, or I assumed it was Trucker Guy from the beginning,
Mm.
because that's typically that's kind of the Scooby Doo esque horror how they did it. They would introduce the main bad guy early on,
Yeah.
make him very very insignificant, and then they would unmask him in the end.
Yeah.
That's what I assumed because they didn't show his face ever. They showed his pants, but and he was dressed quite nicely. Well, but yeah,
Yeah, they technically did kind of do that, except you never see, which I think that this is both to the movie's benefit and its detriment. That because I don't think they had the filmmaking to like back up this like idea, this concept with so many point of view shots from the killer's perspective.
right.
Because like in Halloween you get like these shots of like where Michael Myers sits up in the closet behind her, great shots, with the actual killer. And this, because it's the point of view, that can work to some extent, but on other times, it's like it's just kind of silly, and it makes like the girl running through the woods early on just tripping and falling and looking back, scenes like that are just hilarious to me because
I don't mind the POV shots
yeah,
and even the overuse of POV shots. That's what I really like about the Evil Dead franchise.
right,
Is that in order to save money on special effects and that kind of thing, or just
yeah,
practical effects, you just point the camera and like follow the character with the camera.
yeah.
That's all right from me.
In this movie, it's just really funny to me because it's just like in Evil
It
Dead, you
definitely
have the
is.
crazy camera motion and stuff to kind of back it up, and like there's a sense of like
Right.
speed to it. And this, it's just kind of this like walking and somebody turning around and like tripping and stuff. It
Which
feels
doesn't make a lot of sense once you find it's Mama Voorhees and she's
right.
like pretty lively, but no, she's just stalking her preys or her prey like constantly. Which,
Yeah.
can we talk about the fact that the prey are essentially just it's 12 minutes of useless dialogue and then a death scene and repeat.
Yes. That
It's 12 minutes death scene, 12 minutes death scene, 12 minutes death scene
that's
until
what
the movie's
makes
ending.
watching something like Texas Chainsaw, where you have like 30
So much
minutes
better.
where you just kind of like sitting in like the
This
tension
movie's
of
longer
something.
than that.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just a little bit longer, but it is like 10 minutes longer than Texas Chainsaw. But Texas Chainsaw has that 30-minute stretch basically at the beginning, 35 minutes I think, where like it's just them, it's just establishing these characters just kind of existing. They're not much of like the characters aren't
It
much in
sets the
that movie,
tone
but it sets a
more so.
tone. This movie just like skips right past tone and just goes, we're just gonna start killing people right away. You know,
Yeah.
it just gets right to what, you know, you could call the good stuff, but if it's well done, it's the good stuff. Here it's like, once again, this movie definitely has fans. There's a fan base for this movie. And like I said, I love it. So don't get me trashing this movie for me hating it, because I love that this movie exists. Um,
I'm
it's
always
just,
going to say that you can love a movie but still think it's bad.
oh yeah,
So,
I that's absolutely the case here. This is not like a Dark Man situation where I'm like, oh man, I actually think it's good, even though it has all these campy qualities. This one's not good.
yeah.
Maybe at one point, I don't know. Like if I watched this as like, you know, a 11-year-old kid in the 80s, or maybe even like a 13-year-old kid in the 80s, you know, would I find this scary? Probably, but today, like when I watched it for the first time, I was an adult and I just was like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. And then immediately
It
watched the rest of
definitely
the
is that.
franchise.
At
I
one point I literally saw the the one of the blonde counselors and I was like, "Wait, is that Kevin Bacon? Is the friend of the douchebag Kevin Bacon?"
It is.
And so I looked it up and it's Kevin Bacon. Is this
Um,
his first movie,
this is
like
one of his first
featured film
3 movies, I
roles?
think. I
Okay.
don't remember if Animal House came out before or after, but he was in Animal House as well. But this is definitely one of his first
That's right,
couple.
he was. Animal
So
House.
it
Wow.
really just depends on when Animal House came out. But yeah, this is one of his first, which is just kind of interesting. I mean, he's not given a lot to do, so I'm not gonna like none of the
No,
yeah
he's given about 5 minutes, and then he
gets an arrow through the neck.
no, literally every single aside from the last girl. Is her name Alice?
Yeah,
Alice.
Alice.
Aside from Alice, everyone only gets about 5 minutes of screen time. Then they get butchered.
Yeah, you got Alice, Annie, Steve. They got very basic names. Jack is Kevin Bacon,
Basic white people
Bill,
names. Yeah.
Brenda, and yeah, they're just kind of they're not characters even. They're just people to be killed in this movie. So you kind of and it kind of hammers in that whole like um the virginal quality of the final girl. Because the one, you know, you get throughout the movie, if any character is like wanting, you know, feeling horny at all, you know, and if they have sex or if they're just like overly flirty or whatever.
Well, I thought she and one of the other counselors were dating. I assumed,
What?
like, not Steve, not like Steve is hitting on her, but I legitimately thought
Oh,
one of the
Bill?
yeah. That's why I was thinking
I
Bill.
think she had some like attraction to Bill, but she never did anything. Even in Strip Monopoly that they played, she didn't get to take off her shirt because it got cut off too soon, thus preserving her virginal spirit. You know.
It's
But
so weird.
it gets worse with that as it goes on too. Like as the series goes on, and it makes no sense because Jason, it establishes, is this little kid that died, and so the big twist in this movie is that it's his mother who's killing the kids here.
Yeah,
She
no,
doesn't
hold
want the
on.
camp to
Hold
open.
hold up.
Okay.
Mrs. Voorhees literally says that the reason I killed those camp counselors in the first part of the first scene is because they let Jason die. But like, couldn't she have saved Jason?
She was
I
the cook. I guess there are other people that were supposed to be. I don't know. It's not very fleshed out.
No, shouldn't he be in bed? It's nighttime.
Right. Well, okay, because Jason died in 1957 and the movie opens the next
And
year in
19 Oh, the
1958.
next year.
Yes. So it's a year
Okay.
later. So Jason, the death event happened in 57, which the movie does say. And then the 2 counselors are killed in 58, who are trying to have sex and then they're killed at the very beginning of the movie.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah. And then it's like
Kind of, not really.
they mentioned that there were a couple of other accidents, like a fire was set and there was like flooding and other stuff. That was all Mrs. Voorhees sabotaging the camp reopening throughout the years. So this one, I guess she just had enough. She's like, I'm just gonna execute all the counselors right away.
Sure.
And yeah,
Okay.
but it does. The whole series is foundationally built on like a House of Straws because Jason was a little child that
So
died years ago. And then starting in the second one is when you actually get Jason as like a full grown adult zombie man.
yeah, which
It
they
doesn't
show him in the last like scene of the movie.
right in Alice's dream, but is it, you know?
I mean, I didn't get that it was a dream because it kind of flows from one thing to the next. She's
Right.
out in the water, she gets dragged into the water, she gets rescued, but she asks about the. I didn't see that
That
as a
scene
dream
is
at
just
all.
referred to as Alice's dream. I never took it. I took it as
Is
more
that
literal.
scene called Alice's dream?
I think that's what they've called it, like the filmmakers and stuff have called it in the past.
Okay, well the filmmakers were ripping off other movies, so I
Well,
don't really.
yeah, like you have Carrie, you know, like very famously had a very similar ending where like Carrie she reaches out of the ground and like pulls the other girl down, you know?
My point is, I have no doubt that they probably named scenes vaguely in order to stir up drama.
Sure,
So
sure.
that feels like something they would do if they're like upfront saying let's rip off some movies.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for anybody who's listened to the podcast before, I've talked about how Hannah just does not do horror movies and she's like terrified of
did
them.
you watch this?
She watched this. She was fine watching it. She did have bad dreams after it just because content, you know, it is like still a serial killer movie, but the movie itself she thought was funny and stupid. So
It's actually quite tame
oh yeah.
compared to obviously because of the low budget and the limits of the time.
Yeah.
But
It
yeah,
was the one thing that it kind of stood out for at the time was that it was fairly bloody, which most of these movies weren't so much. The
sure.
MPAA apparently regretted letting this movie slide with as much gore as it has, which is kind of funny.
Is it
Looking
rated
back.
R?
It is rated
It
R.
is
Yeah.
rated R. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, apparently the MPAA like regretted letting them, which is why in the second one, whenever the next Friday the 13th comes around, I think next September, we'll watch that. But you'll see that it's not as it's a little bit less bloody in terms of like the literal blood. But yeah, this one so actually it had makeup effects, a very famous makeup effects guy, Tom Savini, who worked on Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead for Romero, and he's very famous within like horror communities for his contributions to like makeup stuff. Because there's some like for the budget of the movie that it is. I mean, it doesn't super hold up visually. Like you can tell where like the fake neck is that the arrow goes through and like stuff like that. But it they do a pretty good job with like the actual effects
No,
and
the arrow scene through Kevin Bacon's neck is actually pretty good.
yeah, like
Stands
you
up
could
pretty well.
yeah, like it's like you can tell like especially like in HD and everything. Like if you're watching on VHS, maybe not, but like on like
I
a
think I
modern
was
TV.
I think I was watching it. I rented it through Movies and TV, which I think they automatically do Ultra HD.
Yeah. Which I watched it on my nice brand new like OLED TV and on a Blu-ray
Yeah, I
disc.
just watched it on a random
Yeah.
I think it's still a 1080p, but 1080p
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah, and it definitely you can see the cracks in it for sure. Like it's low budget, but it's still I think the gore is well done in it for what it is. But yeah, it's just the whole thing just there's no suspense in the movie is part of it. Part of it is because you have this kind of ridiculous score, which is iconic, the you know?
I hated that so much. I hated that so
Well, that is
much.
present through all of the movies very heavily.
Okay, so that's kind of how I will
Yeah,
feel about the score for the rest of the movies.
the composer is Harry Manfredini, and it's an iconic little bit just because it's so distinct. But I honestly think it just kind of kills any tension because you know when there's like
I
the
mean,
killer there, you know.
Ferris Bueller's bow bow is iconic, but it still gets annoying after a while.
Well,
So
and it's also a comedy.
It's also twice. It plays it like two or three times. In
Yeah.
this movie, in this movie 40 out of the 80 minutes are or 40 out of the 90 minutes are just that over and over
To
again.
me, every single time that that sound plays in any of these movies, it's just funny because it just kind of like, oh, the killer's right there. So it kind of like removes so much of the suspense from any scene that could potentially have the killer in it because you know he's there when it's like, shh, shh,
Yeah,
shh.
like Alice, do you not hear the Alice, do you not hear that? Come
Yeah, and
on.
I don't think the score is bad
Book it,
overall,
girl.
but usually if the score is like
Cheese it.
going all out, like later in the movie when Alice is like scrambling around just screaming, the filmmaking just isn't there, which is why like the editing in Texas Chainsaw is so good and frantic to me. This like where you get like a shot of her just like floundering around on the floor and like not picking up anything to defend herself with and just screaming, it's just really funny. And
Wait,
you
do
get
they have the in Jason X?
I'm pretty sure it's in all of them if to my
Okay, cool. We're
recollection.
watching Jason X.
We'll watch
I
it at
I
some
want to
point.
hear that in space.
Oh,
I'd
absolutely.
rather watch that than any of the others.
I actually,
Which, by
I
the way, isn't Friday the 13th the fourth movie, the final chapter?
yeah, the fourth one is called the
Why do
final
why do
chapter.
they do this?
I don't know, but
Isn't Saw like 7 the final chapter?
yes, this happens a
Okay.
lot in horror movies where they're like, we're ending it, and then they're like, we're not. Which I don't think Friday the 13th they ever planned on ending it for real because they literally came out with a movie the next year.
Another reason I will take anything they say about their movies with a grain of
Yeah,
salt.
yeah. And I think the reason too that like Jason as a character was able to enter the zeitgeist so quickly, even though this movie
I
didn't
was
even
actually
really feature him.
disappointed. Yeah, no, I was disappointed he wasn't in the
But
movie.
it's in the third. So in the second movie, you get Jason as your antagonist now, and then or I say protagonist. Jason is a righteous arbiter of justice sent by God to rid the world of sinful
Of sexy
teenagers.
camp counselors. You know what? I can get on board with that.
I like whenever
Let's
Jason's
go, Jason.
yeah, there's lots of throwing people through windows in these movies. I cheer every time.
Defenestration.
Yes, lots of defenestration. And yeah, I think that the so for the so oh yeah, what I was saying, it's the second one you get Jason, but he just has a bag over his head. It's not until 3, which has a 3D gimmick to it, by the way, um, that you get the hockey mask. But those movies came out 1 year after each other. So it was within 3 years that you had 3 of these movies.
Wow,
So
that is too many.
by the end of the 80s, I think you had 8 or 9 of them. Yeah, 8, because I
I
think that
assume
Jason.
Jason X is Friday the 13th 10 because that would be a
Yes.
play on it. So that's
Yes.
10 movies in 21 years.
Yes. And
That is too
I think
many.
it was 8 movies in the first just decade because I'm pretty sure that part 8, which is Jason Takes Manhattan, which he doesn't actually really take Manhattan, he more just takes a boat to Manhattan. It's basically Jason on a boat, which I'm fine with. But that one came out, I think, in 1989 or 1990. I can't remember. But yeah, I actually don't enjoy these movies as much when they get kind of cheeky with it. Like I like 6. I think 6 gets is the first one that really gets cheeky with it and kind of goofy. And
Is
it's
this why
it
you picked
is
this so that you can just go off about what you like about the franchise that I know nothing about
I love
for
the
an hour and a
franchise.
half?
Yes, absolutely. I
Can we
just
keep
want an
this
excuse
general
to talk
discussion,
about
please?
them.
I have no idea what to talk about with this other than just the first movie.
Well, okay, we'll go back then to the first movie. We'll talk more about the other ones when we get to them because I intend to pick these for every time there's a Friday the 13th in a given month. So, um yeah, but okay, so the movie opens with like the camp group that they're with and they're singing a Christian song, I think. It's like
Yep.
they're singing something hallelujah. So I'm like
Christian hymn,
already
basically.
I
Yeah.
was like already this is clearly a religious film, you know.
Well, of all the movies that we've covered from the 70s, 50s, 80s, 90s, yeah, they're gonna be slightly religious.
But
So
it kind of leans into the whole like sinful nature of the teenagers, you know. They're at a Christian camp and they let a boy drown. I don't actually it doesn't confirm that it's Christian, but it feels like it has to be based on the song they're singing. But yeah, there's all the classic like tropes are in this, like every single one of them that you can think of.
oh yeah.
Like
Yep.
there's a hitchhiking situation, you know, which in a
Two.
horror movie, don't be a hitchhiker, don't be somebody who picks up a hitchhiker. You know, it's just a bad idea. Something wrong. Something bad's gonna happen.
Makai, if you're wanting horror movie or especially slasher movie teenagers to think rationally, that's never going to happen. I'm going to stop you right there. Their IQ, the average IQ of a teenager in a slasher movie is much less than much less than 100.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, you get a lot of like just like the stalker just being around camp because after she kills Annie, the first victim, which
Yeah,
she like,
Mrs. Voorhees drives a
yeah,
Jeep, which kind of confirms
yeah.
my feeling about Jeep drivers. My dad drives a Jeep, so I can make that joke.
But yeah, she's like watching them across the dock as they're like swimming, you know, like
and
staring at the
and one
teens.
of the girls says, "I could swear I see." I think it's Alice. I could swear I see something. It pans over to the shot, and you can't see anything,
Right.
and you know they're much farther away than what the camera sees there.
Yeah, and then the one guy like pretends to drown so that the girl can kiss him, and
Pulls a
like,
sandlot.
yeah, and then
He
Kevin
pulls a
Bacon like
sandlot.
clearly has a terrible belly flop, the worst dive ever.
Oh yeah, I was gonna bring that up. She, she does a fantastic dive, and he does a legitimate belly flop. Like
Like
that
seriously.
hurt. That hurt. I felt that. I felt that through the screen.
I was like, they weren't like, let's shoot that one more time, Kevin.
No, Kevin. Kevin, do you know how to dive, Kevin?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
It's so bad.
It's really bad. Like, yeah, like once again, the performances here are not great. I think Kevin Bacon, honestly, and the girl who plays Marcy are fine. You know,
Yeah,
his girlfriend. But
they're
once
fine.
again, the screen time is not there, and like the writing
Five
is not
minutes.
there.
Kevin Bacon is there, and he's
Yeah,
got maybe like 3 lines of dialogue.
but there's a couple of scenes where Kevin Bacon's like looking off in the distance, you know, and I'm like, he has something else.
He's looking off in the
That
distance.
might be a stretch, but I felt that this time watching it, thinking about it.
Yeah, I think he put that on his resume in Friday
Yeah,
the 13th, 1980. I looked off in the distance a little bit.
yeah.
Oh,
It's also interesting that I think that Pamela's that's Mrs. Voorhees' first name. um,
Pamela Voorhees. Yeah.
Pamela Voorhees. I
Yeah, I
think
could have
that
called that from day one. Serial killer.
she strikes me as a Pamela. Uh, yeah, but apparently Pamela's favorite method of murder is archery. Like, just I think she kills a couple people at least with the arrow, and then
Yeah.
definitely it feels like she must have killed them with a bow at some point.
That I kind of like just the theme of that because it's like a hunter and stalking kind of
Sure.
thing. It's a theme,
It's just funny too
but
because she's just
it's
in
bare minimum.
she's
It's
in a
bare
cable
minimum
knit
for a theme.
sweater the whole time though.
Oh yeah, no. Honestly, that kind of works though. That's very disarming.
Yeah. And
So I could
there,
see it.
there's a couple of shots too that like the camera moves like it's a POV shot, but it's clearly not. And it just feels wrong. And like it's like, is she just standing right behind this tree and they're not seeing her? Like, what's
Yeah.
happening right now? And it's like, okay, I guess this isn't a POV shot because that doesn't make sense. But it feels like it's shot the same way as the POV shots. It's just yeah.
The second she's actually like come out and starts chatting with Alice, she's very talkative, both with like the I assume it's like a her own personality plus like Jason's personality.
Yeah.
And my question is where was that the whole movie?
Yeah, I will
She
say
becomes a
that
chatterbox the second she
right.
comes on screen, but beforehand she says no words. Like even while stalking her prey.
Yeah, she decides to like toy with Alice, it seems too, because she's like suddenly less competent than she was before the second it's
Right.
just Alice.
Right. She takes on grown men who look like they lift, but the second that Alice has a frying pan, she can't do anything.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Bill is played by Harry Crosby, which is one of Bing Crosby's children.
Oh, I was
Fun.
about to say probably the third most well-known Crosby.
He is a Crosby. He went into finance after this movie, so
Sure.
he did not continue acting.
What is it? Nicolas Cage and who's Nicolas Cage related to? Like
Oh, the Coppolas.
cousin?
He's a
The
Coppola.
Coppolas, right?
Yeah,
Right. He's a Coppola.
yeah. He picked the name Cage because he liked the character Luke Cage from comics.
Did he really?
Yep.
I mean, that makes sense, kind of. But
It feels like a
wow,
very Nicolas Cage thing to do.
it does. Just like
Um,
winning an Oscar and everyone forgetting about that.
yeah. Betsy Palmer, when she shows up though as Mrs. Voorhees, she really is the MVP of the movie because she's like actually
That's a
like
low bar.
it's a low bar. Oh, absolutely.
Low
I'm not even
bar.
saying that she's like giving a great performance, but she's actually like doing
It's a
something.
pretty middling performance, but yeah,
Right.
yeah, she at least is trying.
She's unhinged enough to like she like came out of retirement to do this or like she hadn't done a
Oh
movie since
no.
like the late 50s, and she said that the only reason she did this movie cuz she read the script and she said she said that she called it a piece of shit. But she only
You
did
know
it cuz
what,
she said
Betsy?
she
I agree.
she only did it cuz she said she desperately needed a new car. So, kind of like Michael Caine and like Jaws 4, you know, buying a house for his
Yeah,
parents that he always says when people ask him about it. It's
yeah.
kind of like that, I think. But then now this is what Betsy Palmer is just like most well known for at this point, which is crazy.
I think that's because people have forgotten movies from the 50s
Right, yeah.
by and large. So,
It's probably not her fault. It's just that, you know, yeah, pop culture kind of like, you know, popular films like this style of film didn't
well,
really
her
hit in the same
filmography
way.
isn't that massive.
No, no, no. She wasn't like a major star or anything, but
No.
she was. I mean, she comes in and she fills this role. You know, she adds a certain level of kind of craziness to it that I think works. You know, and I think the whole movie could have used more of that though. Like,
Yeah.
if she was present in the whole movie, part of part of a slasher movie's problem a lot of the time that they're having to like figure out within the script, I think, is when did the characters find out about the actual that other people are getting murdered? And this movie waits way too long
Yeah.
because it's not till like close to the end of the movie that she finally knows that other people are actually murdered. And it's like an hour into it before they even start looking around for other people like, huh, something's off, you know?
This movie actually has a decent amount of scenes with the camp counselors, but it does not flesh them out at all.
Oh no, no.
It
Yeah,
makes
cuz
them the same archetype.
yeah. They're pretty much, yeah, they're all carbon copies of each other. They're just
Yeah.
yeah.
I still have trouble. I obviously don't know their names because they say them once or twice, but I don't know the differences between each and every one of them at
Yeah,
all,
they're
even a
not
little bit.
yeah, they don't have any distinctions between them. The only person who's different at all is Alice, and that's just because she isn't trying to, you know, kiss anybody.
Well, no, I thought the hitchhiker. What is the hitchhiker's girl's name?
Oh, Steve, or not Steve. Oh, Annie at the beginning.
Annie. I thought Annie was going to be the protagonist in this
Yeah,
movie
that's
because
what I
it
did too.
felt like it.
The first time because you're introduced to her first, you know, you just assume that. But I think she's more like the Drew Barrymore in Scream kind of thing. Like maybe you think that, but then she's actually the surprise first victim.
Sure.
But it's not
But
like
she seemed like the grounded character because she went to the bar and or diner and actually bothered to like, where's Camp Crystal Lake and that kind of thing. She's oddly enough the most fleshed out in this movie.
but she does ask the dog if it can speak English.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
So she was a little off.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, once again, I mean, she wasn't like
And
it
there's a
was
there's a boomer and silent generation conversation between the truck driver and her. And
yeah.
it's like, ooh, nice generation drama.
Yeah,
That topical.
and you have of course Crazy Ralph, which all of these movies, like all these types of movies have like some crazy guy who's telling the truth,
Yeah,
but
that's
he's
American Michael
crazy.
Palin that I was talking about.
Yeah, yeah. He's crazy though, so he's
But he's got a
disregarded.
wife, and his wife
Right.
worries about him. My
Which
question is, Susan, where have you been? He's been doing this forever.
yeah, he's a recurring character in a few of the movies too.
No,
Like the
he is
early one. He
not.
is. So
Oh.
he shows up again. So yeah. But then yes, Steve
And
is a
fan
creep.
favorite, Crazy Ralph. That is his name.
Yes,
Ugh.
Crazy Ralph, local crazy man. Yeah. You have the hilarious sex scene too with Kevin Bacon and the Marcy character.
He is humping her belly button hard.
Yeah.
That is so weird.
And you get like a shot where it's just like her hands grabbing his ass. So it's just
Yeah,
really
the last
funny.
thing I needed to see was Kevin Bacon ass. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Which, you know, in that regard, this movie's actually slightly tame because you'll get later in the series, and it's like a rule as the
I don't think
series.
you understand. I Unless you bring this up, I'm not getting later in the series.
Oh, well, I'm bringing it up. So as the series goes on, there's a just a rule of thumb that if a character takes their shirt off, they are getting killed. You know, public indecency. Are you kidding me? This
Not
one
in my
though,
Christian Jason Voorhees
yeah.
stream.
This one though, Annie or not Annie, Alice. Alice actually she does toke up a little bit.
They're all the same.
Yeah, but Alice does toke up a little bit, which is unusual. You know, the drug use angle was not part of the sinful behavior, I suppose, in this one.
Well, it was kind of expected for teenagers, probably,
Of course, you know,
and especially in the 80s
but
or
given the second one, not to
60s,
yeah,
70s, 80s. All teenagers did that.
yeah, but not to spoil anything. But given the second one, maybe you know that is taken into consideration. So we'll
I
see.
don't know. I don't know how you spoil slasher movies.
No, because especially
The
these.
monster sometimes dies, comes back in the next few movies. There's a final girl that survives.
Yeah.
Everyone else dies.
Well, that's
I
the
don't know
kind
how
of the
you
thing.
spoil things like
It's
that.
all about execution. This movie and Halloween, if you broke it down on paper, are extremely similar. You know, like obviously this one's supposed to be kind of ripping off that, but they're not that different, you know, and the only reason that Halloween is so much better than this is because of execution. It's just done better. This movie is just kind of like
What? It's tough to do it worse. This feels like a student movie from the 80s.
which it's crazy too cuz like I said I watched like Bloodhook the other week and like other 80s like slashers that came out after this, and it kind of once kind of the after this movie came out, the floodgates were open, you know. I think Halloween like set the format, and then movies like this open the floodgates and just slashers everywhere. Um and it's kind of funny because you watch those other ones and they feel like poor man's versions of this movie almost, and
Oh
yet this
no.
one's still just as bad. Like I don't
This
think
movie is a poor man's version of this movie.
I know. Like I think that like those movies aren't really any worse than this. This one just
It's
has
amazing. Wish.com existed in the 1980s somehow.
what?
Wish.com? You haven't heard that joke?
Oh no,
This is a
sorry.
Wish.com version of this movie.
I'm an old man. I'm not. I don't even know what Wish.com is.
Dude, I am exactly a year older than you. Shut up.
I don't
I am
actually
an
believe
old
I'm an old
man.
man, but like in terms of like my awareness of like things online, I am not there. So
Yeah, did I catch you between doing crosswords and Jeopardy?
yeah,
Uh-oh.
I had this week's New York Times right in front of me. But like it is kind of it's a weird thing. I think this movie gets elevated because of its iconic status, and I think it came out and because it did have this kind of level of gore that's well done enough. And like I said, it kind of gets to, I'm saying in like air quotes, the good stuff of like the horror like slasher stuff.
I got the feeling that even Friday the 13th fans were look at this movie and just go like, it's all right. And that's Friday the 13th like
This
fans.
one, no, this one's pretty well liked by Friday the 13th fans. People like this one and the second one as well, actually, pretty evenly. I don't think
It
it's
feels like a nostalgia thing though. It feels
I
like
think it
you
has to
watch
be.
this, you watch the whole series, and then you think of this fondly because of how like muddled the quality or
Yeah.
how much of a roller coaster the quality of the franchise can be, and it's just that you saw this one first, or at least that this is the first starting point, that's why you find this good.
Yeah. There's a simplicity to it that I can really respect, you know, just like because that's the thing though, like if you're doing something with simplicity, then the filmmaking, the style of it better like liven it up, you know, like really kind of give it something more so that you're not just falling on a weak script. But this
Sure.
movie just doesn't have the style or the filmmaking to back it up. So what would be scary potentially is just really funny. Like even like you get the scene where one of the girls is in the bathroom. I think it's Marcy where she gets killed with the
Yeah.
axe, and you because the movie, this is back to the POV thing where it's kind of like it's a two-handed thing. I think the POV stuff is interesting, but once again it was done better in Halloween. And also you get these in like these kind of moments where you could have her like peel back a curtain and the killer's there, you know, and it's kind of surprising. You're never going to get that in this movie because it wants to have its reveal at the end. So
Or you
she,
could have a shot of her like in the mirror. She puts her face down to like wash her face, and then POV it just comes back up, and then you see the killer behind her.
yeah, they
Like that
really,
feels like a very
yeah, they limited themselves by the way
yeah
that they decided to shoot this, because you only get the shadow of the axe, which hypothetically could be a scary and interesting shot, except the movie doesn't change it up at all. Like this whole, I think that's something that the following ones do better once you have Jason as the killer. I think I like the first one in this series is definitely not my favorite. Like I think they get better in the way that they get worse, but also it's a little bit more interesting to watch later
yeah.
on. This one,
The second Mrs. Voorhees came on screen, I'm like, okay, this isn't horror anymore. This is just we this is
yeah,
just comedy at this point.
right,
That's all this is.
right. But
Yeah,
like,
if you
yeah,
don't have a scary monster, then it's
yeah,
not gonna make your horror movie all
yeah. I
better
think
for it.
the sequels are as bad, but they actually have a monster, you know, and it honestly, to me, it makes it more enjoyable just because it gives, they have more creativity with their approach to how they do the kills, whereas in this first one it's all so
I mean,
limited.
Jason Voorhees as an unkillable monster with a background that no one knows, and he's somehow like still doing what he's doing. That can be interesting, I think.
Yeah, like once again, they're not good, but I think that the yeah, it just gives them more flexibility within the filmmaking to do more interesting things that to me are just as funny, but more fun. Like this movie does get a little boring sometimes. Like there are stretches where I'm like, oh, what am I? Like,
Yeah,
this
there's a kill every 12 minutes, and yet it's
yeah,
boring.
I know. Yeah, I think they definitely are more fun as they go on, even though I don't think they get better. I do think that 4 is the closest that the series gets to being good because they start this kind of through
Well,
line.
yeah, it's the final chapter. It's got to close so many loopholes.
Funnily enough, that's actually the beginning of like a trilogy in the middle of them,
I hate
where you get a character,
movies.
you get a character other than Jason as a through line for a couple of movies, but each movie it's played by a different actor and it's completely different. Like the characterization is completely different, so it's a really
Well, that can be
bad
interesting
trilogy.
done, but I have no doubt they do it terribly.
Yeah, but four is definitely, I think, the best and straight up one. You know, 6 a lot of people like because it's so goofy, but then I don't know. I don't like Jason X as much because I think it's too, like, it's too winky, it's too in the know. But I like it more when it's like
I brought it
not
up because
aware
of
of
how
how bad it
stupid it
is.
looks.
Yeah.
Obviously, haven't seen it. It's just
Oh yeah.
it's Alien Resurrection with Jason Voorhees in space.
Yes.
That's it.
Basically,
That's what it looks like to me.
there are some fun kills in there, but they're usually ruined by like bad one-liners.
I mean, I know
So
Jason versus Freddy is a thing, is and Alien versus Predator is a thing. Is there
okay.
like a quattro? Is there an Alien versus Predator versus Jason versus Freddy?
Oh, if only.
Yeah.
I'm in that. I want that.
No. I would totally watch that. I've
Well,
seen Alien versus Predator.
Jason versus Freddy is actually one of the best Friday the 13th movies, and I'm not even kidding. That
Well,
one's
yeah,
fun.
because it pits two unkillable monsters together with interesting
Yeah. And
like
that movie
characteristics to them.
understands that Jason is the hero of the story. It truly does. So, it's I actually like that one. I like that one and I like 4 like genuinely to some extent, you know? Like there's once again, not like high cinema, nothing like that, but
I think
there
this was just Silent Generation like hating on boomer teenagers at the time. That feels like what this is from what you're telling me.
right.
It's as if millennials made a slasher movie about Gen Z and they just like killed him for like 10 movies.
They actually did make some sort of slasher for Gen Z with Kevin Bacon in it on like Peacock. It was
I
called
mean,
like They,
they've made several for millennials,
but
like the Paranormal Activity movies
oh yeah,
and what Unfriended, the Facebook group chat horror movie.
yeah. This one that I'm talking about was specifically titled They Them, like they slash them. So it was really playing into the the younger generation with that. It's kind of like that's
It should
just
be called it should be called She Them because I want to she them kills.
oh see look you're already better than whatever that movie is.
This also has Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up because Kevin Bacon. The Kevin
Oh
Bacon
no.
connection, the 6 degrees. But that was a single degree. Actually, it would be negative degrees because he's just Kevin Bacon, isn't it? So, but either way, yeah, this movie sucks. I think that it has a unique place in horror history just because I think it really is the one that started the sequelization trend to like the degree that it did. But yeah,
I
it's
get the feeling that this movie really set in stone. Oh, so this is going to be it from now on.
right. Like that's what I feel like it is though. Like they took the tropes that another movie established without intending to and made them tropes. And kind of everything else kind of ran with that, and then you just get this deluge of these types of movies in the time. And why is this one 11 part franchise? I don't know why it's an 11
Because
part franchise
money.
over any other ones. I think it just hit at the right time
Again,
is
because
all.
money.
Yeah, because like the Nightmare on Elm Street ones make sense because they have a different angle on it. But and Halloween being the original also has like I understand like, but this one is just kind of a Halloween ripoff that's not as good. It has a unique setting in the woods, that's very cheap to film in and
Yeah.
probably makes these really easy to make.
And the
And
fact that it's all teenage camp counselors, you don't really need good actors or
right,
dialogue, don't do
exactly.
you?
So whereas Halloween got kind of lost in the lore of it all, I think. I don't think Friday the 13th did so much. I think it just kind of is purely its own thing that it just kind of keeps doing its thing the whole time. It's reliable. It's exactly
Also,
what you
the
expect.
Michael Myers mask is a William Shatner mask stretched out, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I know about that franchise.
Halloween is good. I don't know. I don't think you'd like it
Well,
as
it's John
much.
Carpenter. I
Yeah.
like the thing.
Yeah,
So
I think I don't know how much you would like Halloween because I mean it is dated. Like it doesn't like the
probably
scares don't.
not. The
Yeah,
reason I like the thing is the setting of it
yeah,
and
the
the
Antarctic.
psychology of it
Yeah,
or the
I think
philosophy of it.
I think that Michael. I think that Friday the 13th, or I think that Halloween. I mean, has that same kind of psychology there, not to the same extent as the thing, but it
Also, Kurt
does.
Russell, dude.
It has some more interesting things going on than just what this movie has going on, at least psychologically. Because, there's, yeah, I'm not to get into that movie too much. I'll probably pick it at some point because I do love it. Like, I probably personally
I
like
will
that
be more
movie.
than happy when you do.
Yeah, I probably personally like that movie more than Texas Chainsaw. I love Halloween. I think it's great. But it is a little bit more dated than I think Texas Chainsaw because Texas Chainsaw is so singular and Halloween is a little bit more broad, I think.
It's yeah, it's encapsulated quite neatly. Texas Chainsaw. I mean, the
Yes.
thing the thing is very open ended.
Yeah. So yeah, but do you want to just get into scoring with this thing?
Yes, please.
Absolutely. All right. So we're doing scoring as we've always done it. We have three different ratings of 0, 1, or 2 across 10 categories. 0 being we don't think it's good, 1 being good, 2 being great. Leaves us a lot of room. And yeah, so the first
Quite casual,
category,
not what we would rank this, and yeah,
yeah, the
just
first,
starting a conversation, not
right,
really like setting in stone what a movie is.
yeah, the first category is writing. 0. There's barely a
Thank
script
you,
in this
because I
movie.
was gonna say it. Yeah, no,
Th-
there's
this this movie got its financing based on like a newspaper ad where he had just the title of the movie on like a splash page, and also he created the little Friday the 13th logo where it like hits the glass and shatters. That's how he got financing for this movie before he had a script. They were just I think the studios just knew that there was
and it
some money to be
succeeded,
made.
and
Yeah,
that's all you need to know about the film
right.
industry.
I think the studios just knew there was some money to be made on something that was probably cheap to make and had a catchy title like that you could advertise as being something scary. Because at this point, that had a proven track record too. Because not
It
only was
definitely
it,
is. It definitely is a very catchy title, but I don't understand why it's Friday the 13th.
yeah, it doesn't.
That it doesn't go into it at all.
No, no, not really. Like every time it's a movie is set, it's set around Friday the 13th, but that doesn't always make sense. The next one jumps forward 5 years, so I guess you can justify it. But is this movie set in 1980? It doesn't really say. It just says present day.
It says present day. That could be
And then
1979 when it's made,
right,
1980 when it's released.
but
Could be
then the
anything.
next one's 5 years ahead, and I'm like, when are these
5 years
set?
ahead of present day.
it,
Wait a second. The
it,
future.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, and it came out just 1 year later, so I'm like, I don't know what
1986? Did
I
this
don't
come
know
out
when these
after?
right. And then there's so many of them that come out year after year for these, only skipping a year occasionally, like for the first several. I'm like, I don't know when these are set, you know. But I guess that's why Jason X makes sense because it gets all weird and sci-fi by the time it hits the 2000s. I don't know.
Sure.
But Jason Goes
I
to
mean, that
Hell
was just
doesn't
a thing.
feel. Yeah,
That
Jason
was
Goes to
just a
Hell is like
thing in
90s though.
2000s.
I don't know. Either way, it's just yeah, it's paper thin. This movie just doesn't have a lot going for it as far as writing goes.
Yeah.
World building.
So the thing about the world building, if we're just we have to look at it from the movie's perspective, not the franchise,
Yeah.
right? So, in my opinion, this does not make a world to me.
No.
This doesn't if the franchise is based on this, I don't see how it goes very far from this without
I
it taking a
yeah.
gigantic step up in the second, third, fourth movies and
Right.
so on, because it basically just gives us Jason is killed in 1956, I guess 56, 57. There's a camp surrounding that suffered many blights like fires and flooding and that kind of thing. The town knows about it. It doesn't even explore much of the town. It just says the town, oh, Camp Crystal Lake, it's doomed, sorry. It doesn't
Right.
go into that. It definitely doesn't go into much into Pamela Voorhees
No.
after she's on screen. It just makes it so that she's a very strange woman, which I
Right.
believe. But the ending of it is, I guess, setting up a franchise, but I don't know if I had seen this movie in 1980, I had with the mind that I have now, with no recollection of the franchise as a whole, I would not know where this franchise is going from here.
Oh, no,
I
not at
would not
all.
know what to build on.
I mean,
So
it
I think
literally
it's a zero for
well, the
that.
way they build it doesn't even make any sense. Like I said,
No,
the
not at all.
Jason resurrected as like a zombie man who lived at the bottom of the lake, you
Wouldn't
know?
Pamela like try and find his body at some point? It's been 13 years,
I
woman.
don't it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. Like it makes less sense as the series goes on, and that's part of the joy of it for me is that it never made sense to begin with, really. But I
It only
conceptually
goes up, baby.
conceptually I like the whole psycho riff on this with like the mother being the killer in this situation. And I really like that idea. It's just all comes down to a matter of execution, and here it just doesn't work.
Yeah, this first
And
movie doesn't do anything like that.
no, no. It like conceptually, if you tell somebody this is why this is happening, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But watching it, I'm like, this makes less sense than telling me just like in one sentence why it
And
makes
it's weird
sense.
because I imagine this is a straw man, but I would think that the average um Friday the 13th film buff would tell me that this does like world building pretty well, but I don't have any knowledge of the rest of the movies. I can only look at this movie and it
Yeah.
does it poorly.
Based on the
So,
rest of the movies, it does it. It's this movie looks even worse because of the way it doesn't continue any of like the logic flow. There's just like some big leap that you have to make with the Jason character that's not set up in this movie at all. You know, this is a one-off slasher is
right.
what this is, and it doesn't make sense for it to continue with her
Yeah.
being clearly decapitated in this movie. You know,
Does she come
so
back?
um okay, the actress, yes. The character, no. Jason kind of
What?
talks to
What?
his mother's severed head, but you just hear her voice. You don't really get to see her that really anymore.
Oh, okay. So it's very Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man 1
Yeah, where he's talking to like the helmet,
where he's
kind
talking
of.
to the helmet. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, Jason doesn't talk though. He just kind of grunts and whatever. Yeah.
The original Incredible Hulk for movies.
Hulk talks more though. Hulk
Yeah.
says a few words.
I mean, Hulk smash.
Hulk smash.
I guess
Uh,
Jason slices.
Yeah. Jason does all sorts of things. The machete is the most iconic thing that he uses, but man, he uses
I would figure that
pitchforks
would be most
and
of his.
anything
Then
that he can get his
again,
hands on, you know?
then again, it was called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but like two of the
Yeah.
five are done with chainsaw.
Yeah. Michael
And actually,
Myers,
it's really only one of the five,
yeah.
right? No, two of the five.
Michael Myers might be the most consistent in terms of his weapon of choice with like the simple knife, you know?
Sure. Oh,
but
the
or Freddy with his
Ghostface
claws.
from
Yeah,
Scream
yeah,
has his knife, but
yeah, and
I guess
Freddy has
that's
his
just a
claws.
take on Halloween.
Yeah, but Jason. I mean, Jason changes his mask between the first two movies, so he's not really consistent in his look even, and his mask
Sure.
even changes across.
Yeah, I
Like
was
it's still the hockey
surprised when the
mask, but
when Jason came out of the water and attacked Alice. I was like, "Is that Jason?" I'm super confused. That doesn't look like Jason.
I like the idea of you just watching that scene, and it's supposed to be like this jump scare, and you're just like, "Is that Jason?" Like that's your only reaction.
That is actually what I said aloud. Is that
Is that
Jason?
Jason?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted Alice to like stop, 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 stop. Are you Jason?
Yeah, it's really bad. Oh, like that jump scare is hilarious. It's one of the funniest jump scares of all time, as far
I
as
will
I'm
say,
concerned.
yeah, because you're
Oh, it just so like Alice she keeps dropping her weapons as she's running away. Like
oh
she
my
drops her
god, she
bat, she drops
does.
everything. She's so
I'm sorry, a
bad at.
frying pan is not that heavy. You can hold it and keep going.
Well, she
Ugh.
also just leaves, Pamela lying on the ground, just like,
Hmm.
oh, she's
Yeah.
fine. I'm not gonna sit over here or take her machete even.
She's on the ground,
Yeah,
semi incapacitated.
she
Finish
like
her.
yeah, she like rests on a boat, or even just like if you're not gonna finish her, just stand over her with the knife to her until the people come in the morning.
Girl,
Like
have you never played Mortal Kombat?
I'm just
Do
like
you need the
any amount of
narrator
logic.
screaming fatality or finish him? Oh,
No, she goes and like lays on a boat outside until Pamela shows back up with the machete that she left behind. But then, she uses like the paddle to the boat, and there's multiple boats there. And after she decapitates
there are
Pamela,
multiple boats there.
after she decapitates her, she gets in the boat
For
and just starts.
reasons?
Yeah, well, she gets in the boat, goes out into the middle of the lake. I don't know why, but
She's taking care of the monster.
she's paddling with her hand too, though. Did you
She
see
is.
that?
She is.
And I think in the later shot, it shows she even has a paddle in the
A
boat.
paddle in the boat.
What are you doing?
I told you the second teenagers enter like a horror movie, their rationality goes to zero.
Yeah. And speaking of the teenagers and their lack of rationality,
Oh
characters
man.
is our next category. That's also a 0.
That's also gonna be a 0.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is awful.
Pretty easy,
It is very easy on
They're
this.
all teens, and the guys are mostly somewhat creeps.
Yeah.
Like the way that they
No,
treat the
there's
women.
there's no not even that. They don't flesh out the girls long enough for them to
No.
be even remotely likable. So
It's
there's
more
no
like,
likable
oh,
characters in
stop
this.
it. It's the maximum amount of character development you get to the girls, like when the guy's like hitting on her. Oh, you stop.
Yeah.
Basically. It's not much more than that.
They treat teenagers like they're 5 years old on the playground.
Yeah, Marcy does have this weird dream that she talks about like raining
I
blood
forgot
and stuff.
about that.
Which
What
is just like,
that not only came out of left field but is never brought up again.
no,
And
it's
she
so
dies.
weird.
She dies 10 minutes after.
Apparently, they used that monologue to audition the girls for the movie.
Seriously?
Yeah, they were like,
There
"This
was
is
an
our best
audition
piece
for
of
this
writing."
movie?
Oh yeah,
Oh.
they were like, "This is our best piece of writing. We got to use this."
I mean, it technically is, but yeah, if you could have anybody just do nothing in a scene, it would be
Yeah.
better writing than the dialogue that
Yeah.
they have.
Oh, and I
You could
forgot
have
'cause-
Kevin Bacon staring out into the lake, and it'd be better writing.
So yeah, and also apparently after Mrs. Voorhees like kills everybody in the movie, she like sets up their bodies as like surprise traps. Like, whoa, it's another body. 'Cause, like when Alice is running away, she just keeps running into different bodies that keep like one like flops down. It's like hanging. It's like,
Yeah.
what? How much time did she take just to like set up these bodies to like surprise?
I think it's
Alice as
Marcy,
she's
like,
running around?
she gets thrown through the window.
Right,
with,
Marcy
like,
gets
the most amount of rope
Yeah.
possible. There was
Which
like
is-
100 yards of paracord
Yeah.
on her.
Yeah, that's the first body through the window in a Friday the 13th movie. That's kind of a big deal. But yeah, she gets thrown through the window, and then like Steve was hanging up, and then Bill was like hung up with arrows on the door, like I'm like, how much time did she take to set these up just to freak her out?
Seriously.
Like it's like
The
weird.
the
Like,
poster says this is 24 hours, and it takes like a solid 18 hours before the action
Yeah.
starts, I have to imagine. So
why are you even
you don't-
bothering? Like that's my
Exactly.
question the whole time. Is like, why are you even bothering doing this? Just kill her.
is it for the freak like aspect, like freaking her out. Why would you do that? You've
It
killed
just
everyone else.
it's not like in Friday the 13th when they're like have the one girl and they're like tormenting her. They're like there's a reason for it. There's a psychotic reason for it, but it's a reason, you know. They're trying to feed grandpa and like doing this weird stuff. But
It'd
in
be
this
like they
one,
just throw is her name Sally from Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
yeah, Sally.
See, I remember her name over any of the names in this movie.
Mhm.
And we reviewed that 2 weeks ago. What does that
Right.
say about this movie?
Right.
But when they were torturing Sally in the kitchen scene or the dining room scene, if they had just like thrown all of their bodies at her, that would be like what happens in this movie.
Right. Yeah, it's so weird. Like it makes sense in Texas Chainsaw when she finds the one friend in like the freezer, you know?
Yeah.
Like or the you know like I does that happen? Yeah, that does
One
happen.
of the guys does, but
Yeah,
yeah.
but somebody finding a body like that makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
But like the bodies that are like clearly set up to freak somebody out, like it doesn't make any sense in
Or
this
just
movie at
literally
all.
fly through the window.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's I don't know what yeah, it doesn't make any there's no logical
No.
thing to it.
No,
Which I mean
not
she's
at
a
all.
crazy person, but like that can only take you so far.
Yeah,
Within
crazy
like
crazy people have stuff to
yeah.
do too. They can't
They're
just
busy.
yeah, they are busy being crazy, all right?
She pretty efficiently took out the rest of them, so I don't know
Seriously.
why she's taking her time with this one, but either way, directing. Sean S. Cunningham, I got nothing against this guy. When he talks about this franchise and his like he seems pretty honest about it, you know? Like
When you bring up his personality, that's when you
you
know it's
know it's
rough.
bad. Like but like in some interviews and stuff, you know, he's like I bought this really nice house from this movie. I never expected that. That's so cool. Basically is his mentality on everything. He's like I don't really have much to do with the rest of the movies, you know. I didn't know how it was going to go from here. Other people started to take over, but you know, I keep getting money from it, so that's nice. It's kind of like seemingly his mentality on it. So I'm like
That would be mine
sure.
too. If I could put in very minimal effort
Sure.
into a movie and make millions of dollars, absolutely I would do
Absolutely.
that. I can't blame the
Uh-huh.
man for that.
Oh,
He made a
absolutely.
terrible movie.
Yeah, and he made some other movies. I've never seen them. None of them are as significant as this. This is definitely his most famous movie. So, yeah, directing's a zero though.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. Absolutely.
It's really bad. Acting an easy zero again.
Yeah, another easy zero.
Yeah, visuals. Okay, I don't hate the way this movie looks, and I think
No.
it has some good makeup effects
I
and
think
stuff.
I think that's due to its simplistic nature though.
Yes,
Nature.
I think they capture the right tone with the visual quality of the film. You know, they with the camp setting, the nighttime stuff, it all like I actually like the way that this movie looks. I'm not gonna say it's great, but I think that with like Tom Savini's makeup effects that he worked on and like that kind of stuff, I'm willing to give this movie a one for visuals.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to bring up cinematography wise, obviously we talked about the POV shots for the monster, but one of the shots was I don't know if it was a POV for the monster. I don't know if you remember this. I think it's Alice and Bill go into the telephone station trying to make a phone call.
Yeah,
It's behind them. It shows them going into it. It pans over to the window where it shows them like trying to get the phone or whatever, and it's not coming up.
the line is cut.
And then it pans over to the line being cut. That's a nice shot.
Yeah,
But that's the only one I remember being nice. So
yeah.
that's yeah.
That
Oh
comes
one
down to I think the direction is bad, but the actual visuals like quality of the film, like
right.
I like the way it looks, and I think that like like the special effects makeup stuff is all done
The
pretty
makeup is
well.
pretty good for
Yeah,
low budget and for 1980.
right,
Yeah, not bad.
right. Yeah, I'll give that the visuals a one in the movie.
I'll give the visuals a one.
Editing a zero though.
Editing is a
Yet
very
another
very clear zero.
very clear
It's,
zero.
there's not much good I can say about the pacing of this movie, nor can I say about like how exactly it's edited.
Right.
And
It's
there it felt like some of the shots, the belly flops shot, for instance, like you didn't have a second take. Really, you didn't have a second take for that. Whatever.
right. And also like I said, like the editing in Texas Chainsaw kind of adding to the mania. This one, the where they didn't edit, it
It
just
feels
felt
lazy.
wrong. Like it just felt like she's just like I felt the direction. Like and by that
Yeah.
I mean I felt the director standing there going like, just like fumble around a little bit. Like you're having a hard time. Like stuff like
Yeah,
that.
we'll film you fumbling around for 15 seconds and
Just keep
then cut.
screaming too. Just like, keep screaming, you know?
Oh man, she screams so much in this movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um yes, editing zero. Sound. The score is hilarious. It's iconic but hilarious to me. I don't think it's good.
I don't think it's
Um,
good either.
I think the sound overall is pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good. Our genre category. This is obviously a horror film.
So I'll start with this because
Okay.
obviously you know more about this, so you can fill in the blanks of what I'm going to say. But because I've only seen so many horror movies, I still think this is poor when it comes to tense situations and jump scares and that kind of thing. When it comes to the Jason jump scare, it's a nice jump scare in a vacuum. But
Right.
when you take into account what jump scares are supposed to be, or jump scares that have the most effect, are ones that are tense and tense and tense, and it's a climax or a crescendo building up to the jump scare. That is the best kind of jump scare because it puts the
Right.
audience on edge and then hits you with it. Just giving us Alice on a boat and you see the police officers arriving at the scene.
It's like the
So it's
victorious
kind of a
music swells.
resolution. Exactly. There's
Yeah.
a resolution, and then you give us one final jump scare for the heck of it. That is not a good jump scare.
No, no.
And this movie has those so many times. The only I'll say this, the only tense situation I kind of like is when Annie, is it the hitchhiker that gets killed? Annie is picked up by the Jeep. That entire scene and the sequence in the woods, when it comes to the horror aspect, I like that. The
Yeah.
editing is terrible, the acting is horrible, the directing is bad, but the tense situation like that is done well. But that
Yeah.
is like the only one.
Yeah, like I said, the movie like fails at having any kind of suspense. Part of that is because there's no real build up to it. Part of that is because I said the direction and the POV shots and the limiting factor of that, relying exclusively on it. I also think that just yeah, the pacing of it with like the way the kills are, and also the not realizing that people are getting killed, like everybody just kind of one by one getting killed in a
I couldn't
vacuum,
keep track
basically.
of who got killed
Yeah, well, because some of
until it
them were
showed
off
me the
screen.
body.
Yeah, some of
Yeah,
them were off screen. So
douchebag guy was killed in his bunk, but we
yeah,
don't see that until after the sex scene.
right. Or during the sex scene,
Oh my god,
where it
it was
pans
during
up.
the sex scene. Yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like this big reveal, but it's just funny. Yeah, because you like pans up to him and he's got a slashed neck.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just as far as the horror goes, this movie, like I said, Hannah could watch it. She had bad dreams afterwards because it still has some content stuff in it, just with it being a serial killer movie. But it's not scary. It is not scary at all.
Yeah.
It is funnier than it is scary, and that's a through
And
line
that's
through
a
this
bad thing
series.
for horror
Right. For a
movies
horror
that
movie,
aren't
yeah.
scary movie.
Yeah. So yeah, it's for me the horror is a zero.
Yeah.
Uh, our final category is always impact, which doesn't really have a direct play on the quality of the movie, but I do think it's interesting to point out. And also, for the sake of a movie like this, it's like, should you watch this movie? I wouldn't say yes. You know,
Oh, is that
like,
what we're taking into account now?
well, right now, I'm not saying that for impact. I'm just saying, like,
Oh, kind of like in
generally,
between. Should you watch
I think
this?
generally, like, our score to some extent reflects on like how much we recommend this movie collectively, our show, to watch it. And I think that the one thing that I can say that you should like maybe consider watching this movie for, if you are a horror fan, is that this movie has an interesting and unique place within horror history still. You know, it is the beginning of a very long running franchise, and it is a
You know what you should
significant
watch?
what.
Watch a retrospective from YouTube. Watch like a 2 hour long retrospective about the whole franchise from YouTube because that would cover the basics. It would cover the good parts, the bad parts, but it would go over the bad parts in a way that's constructive.
Yeah. I
That's what
mean,
I would say.
I would fully recommend this movie to anybody personally because I really just think it's so dumb. But um
I'm not going to stop anybody from watching it, and you
oh,
do you,
absolutely. But I
but
do think
I wouldn't recommend this movie to people.
yeah, I do think that this movie is a two for impact though. Not due to its quality, but due to just the fact that
So if we're taking into
it's
account,
so it's completely
obviously
iconic.
it made a franchise, it's iconic, yes, that kind of thing, which we gave Iron Giant specifically just for the cultural impact and the fact that it's still in the zeitgeist today. We
Yeah.
gave that a 2. So I guess we do have to give this a 2. I
This
don't know.
movie has a definitive impact, I think, on
Sure.
the horror community. It's still popular at conventions. The character of Jason, as the series has gone on, is even Mrs. Voorhees is an iconic character at this point. I'm actually surprised you didn't know about that. Just because that
No, I didn't know
character
about
is
that.
Mrs. Voorhees is referenced a lot in things, still to this day. But yeah, like, just for starting this series and it
Yo, you know
being
what?
a
I
part.
think the I think it was something that I had heard about, but I didn't really like connect into my brain. I think there's like a Family Guy cutaway with like Jason and Mrs. Voorhees. That's the only thing I think I know about it. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that like the domino just fell to where I remembered that, but I think it's because I have heard of it, but I didn't connect the dots because
Yeah.
obviously I have no context for it.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah. Now
yeah.
that you have the context for it, you'll probably hear a few more
I
references and get
watched
a
this
few more
movie. I'm
things.
going to be honest, I still don't think I have the context.
But at least for like Mrs. Voorhees, which does get referenced from time to time and things even to this day.
Sure.
But yeah, like
No, I think I might repress this.
I mean, if that's what you feel like doing, go for it. But yeah, not a good movie. It does have a weird cultural place. I love it because I love the sequels more. The first one is not my favorite, but um yeah, it's not good though.
That's a good point.
And
That's an interesting point. It's okay to love things based on their sequels or prequels, and it's
yeah,
always okay to love things anyway. I'm not going to try and take away that from people, but man, is this a bad movie?
yes, it is a very bad movie, and it's not good. And it's kind of interesting too, because actually, Hannah and I just rewatched the first Harry Potter, because she hasn't watched those movies. She didn't get to grow up watching them, so she's like always wanting to watch them every like now and again. At least she's wanting to put it on, and every time I watch the first one, it's not that I think it's a bad movie because I really don't.
Yeah,
I think it is a good movie, but I don't get excited to watch that movie anymore. But if I'm watching the whole franchise through,
it
there's
might be the
still like,
worst one from the franchise. I'd have to if it, it's going to be tough.
yeah,
I'm going to veto going over the entirety of the series, or probably even we maybe one of them, maybe the third one because of Quran,
yeah,
or maybe
the
the fourth one because I think it's the best one. But
yeah,
I well, I'm not going to go over
yeah,
just like every single one
right. The
because
first one's just not my favorite. Like I don't get excited to watch it. It's a kids movie and it is what it is, but like I think that it has a lot of rewarding value in watching it again when you're watching the whole series
it definitely
through.
feels the most magical, and I
Yeah.
can quantify that kind of because of its original nature, in that there was nothing before it
It has to
exactly
do a
like
lot of
that.
world building.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and it definitely does the most world building out of the
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So this first movie in this series doesn't do a lot of good world building, but it does set up
not
the
at all.
franchise. But it sets up the franchise for what it is. It really hammers in the tropes of it, and you
It
really
sets
get
up
the
the tone, I
continuation.
imagine, but
Yeah, it sets the tone as well. It gets like
as
it
bad
is
as
kind
that
of
tone is,
nice. As much as I like don't even like this movie very much within the context of the franchise that I do love, comparatively, I still like going back and watching it when I'm watching the series, just because it does add to it. It adds to kind of this odd quality of it. It's kind of like how Fast and Furious didn't become what it was until way later down, because they had some weird spin-offs and stuff, but then they try to connect it all back. It's kind of like that here, but with the very first movie not really knowing quite what it was going to become. So
sure.
it's kind of got an interesting place. I like it for that reason. But yeah, that's all I have left to say about Friday the 13th.
Yep,
So next week will be our Halloween movie, or like our Halloween week
Halloween week.
movie.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
5 days before
Kyle has
Halloween.
selected that. This one is not going to unfortunately come out on Friday the 13th, or Thursday the 12th is when we'd be releasing of October.
It'll
But
come out 6 days after. No,
yes, it'll come out 6 days after. So I'll put a post up about it on the 13th.
technically the same week if you think
Yeah,
about it.
technically the same week, but either way, what are we watching for the week of Halloween?
So I wanted to take or select an interesting take on a horror genre, that being war or military,
Okay.
because that is a very untapped potential for me. The only one that I can name off the top of my head that's any good is Predator. And that is a military movie, but it's not like a war movie or based on like a war that occurred in real life that would be an interesting take on a historical aspect. So I haven't selected Predator.
Okay.
I have selected the 2018 movie Overlord.
Oh, I've been wanting to watch Overlord. I'm glad you picked this.
I was hoping you hadn't seen it because
Yes,
I
I
I
was.
I haven't seen it either, but given the fact that it's based on or around D-Day, I think I have some interesting points. I also think that the reason I bring up war or military horror is because that feels like a very like a gold mine
Yeah,
because war is horror and it is very easy to translate.
right.
Like Band of Brothers is one of the scariest TV series in my opinion
Yeah,
because of how visceral it is. Like I can only watch that series like once a year because of what it does to the chemicals in my brain. So, yeah.
yeah. No, it's yeah.
It's also J.J.
That's
Abrams, but he's only
yeah.
producing, so
Yeah, that's been on my watch list for years. I was gonna go see it in theaters, but then like something came up that day and I didn't. And then I just never watched it since. So I'm really glad you actually
technically a
picked that
flop.
one. Yeah,
38 million dollar budget, 41.7 million dollar return.
yeah. It
So,
didn't really stick around in theaters long enough for me
no.
to like have a good week to watch it when it
And
was
I
like
had
a
never
busy
heard of this
time.
before I went researching for a good
Mm.
movie.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah, no, I really wanted to watch this when it came out, but I never did.
yep.
So yeah. Oh, and for those, we didn't recap, but yeah, our final score
3
for
out of
Friday the
20.
13th was 3 out of 20. So that's tied with Crash for our
That is tied
worst.
with Crash.
Although I would watch this again over Crash any day. But
Thank you for listening to I honestly would too.
yeah.
Thank you for listening to our second roast of a movie.
Second roast, though I do give it a lot of love. But yeah, yeah, we have new episodes that come up every single Thursday. So if you like what we're putting out, keep coming back and checking us out. Next week we'll be talking about the 2018 film Overlord. All right, that'll do it for us. We'll see you at the movies.